So let me go ahead. Andrew Freeborn, engineer for the Kern County Fire Department, Public Information Officer. So the Kern County Fire Department and the other county agencies that operate within Kern County, we have multiple methods of getting emergency messaging out. And just as the audit showed in these various counties that the audit had taken place in, they also had various methods of getting this messaging out. Some of the alert notification systems, we have very little control over it. It's an existing system, and we can simply input information and it goes out. It is what it is. There are other forms of notification systems that we have which allow us more flexibility to target the audience, to go ahead and really tailor our message for specific groups. It even allows individuals to receive the message how they want to receive it, whether it's a phone call, a text message, a flashing light of some kind, whatever they need for their specific instance in their life. In times past, we have done campaigns such as that, of notifying the community. Now it's just an ongoing, everyday effort. We use every method that we can think of. We do PSAs that run on television. We talk about it on the radio. We use social media. We go to town hall meetings. So really, we look for every way that we can to get the message out to everyone that we can, because these are opt-in systems. The citizens here like their privacy. They're entitled to their privacy, and they deserve their privacy. We don't assume anything of anyone, but we have to constantly be preparing for any type of emergency or any type of needs that may arise for individuals during those emergencies. Mm-hmm. So as the audit had stated, it's not good for any jurisdiction to have a plan that is down to every last detail, but they should all have a framework that allows them to expand, to contract, to go ahead and respond to various types of emergencies. And so that's what we have here. So an example of that is, years back, there was the Isabella Dam failure plan that was developed. And throughout that gave us a framework to go ahead and adjust, to expand or to contract, to take lessons learned. So from that plan that was developed, it then allowed us to continue to adjust it, to review it as to, is it still appropriate for what our communities are dealing with at this point in time compared to when the plan was developed. It also set in place relationships, partnerships between public and private agencies, and now there's that working partnership and relationship. Well, if it works for this type of evacuation in this type of area, now we can duplicate that. We can use that best practice when the evacuations are needed in this area for this other type of emergency. We now have a nice framework to operate within. So the earthquakes allowed us to continue that review and improvement process, because it has to be ongoing. Just as a city and county continues to grow, the way that you meet the needs has to adjust as well. And so after the Ridgecrest earthquakes, we were able to have an after-action review. And that was a review of, how did everything go? Were there any strengths that we were able to learn from this that we did very well? Were there areas that we thought, you know what, we would have preferred, now that we can look at it in hindsight, we would have changed this? It was a success. We handled the Ridgecrest earthquake successfully, but there's always a lesson to learn, even if you handle something successfully. And I believe that's even something that was brought out by Ventura County Fire Department in that specific audit. They would measure that it was a success, the way that they responded to the various emergencies. But an auditing company may not view it as a success. From our perspective, we want people to be safe, we want people to not be injured, we want people to not lose their lives, and that's our goal, is to save lives and then to save property and the environment as well. So we're constantly adjusting to make sure that we can reach that, but only hindsight is 20/20. So You can't possibly, no matter who you are, no matter what agency you are, you simply cannot prepare for every last possible scenario. You just have to make yourself as flexible as you can to whatever emergency may arise. It depends on the urgency, really. And that's one of those things of you can't have a specific guideline and say, there's an emergency, everyone do this, because there's a matrix of questions that really have to get sorted out. If it's an absolute emergency, it's always 911 that an individual is going to call. If it's not an urgent emergency, there's time to work things out. Many people call their friends, they call their families. We're not assuming that people can't care for themselves. We're here to provide the needed resources to help individuals. But it's not on us to assume that people can't care for themselves. That would be inappropriate on our part. Many of the individuals in our communities that might be disabled or have functional or access needs are very happy and are capable of still taking care of themselves. And we're not going to say, sorry, you're not allowed to take care of yourself. So many of those individuals, if it's not a specific emergency and it's super urgent, they may have their methods already in place. They can also call and contact. Oftentimes we work a lot with aging and adult services. We're able to give them information that they can relay to individuals, and they're also able to take in information that they're receiving from individuals and pass it on with us. And that's just one example of how the different agencies and partnerships and relationships work when the actual emergency happens. It becomes that two-way communication of being able to identify the specific needs and how we go ahead and correct and meet those needs. There's no specific central database that has that, because what we're dealing with is multiple incorporated cities within one county. You have individuals that today might have a need, but in 3 days from now that need is no longer there because they're recovering from whatever they were dealing with. Individuals that might go into surgery, so they're not thinking I need to put myself on this database because I'm having, let's say, knee replacement surgery, and it could be difficult for me the day after the surgery if there is an earthquake. So that list is perhaps one of the single greatest hurdles that we have of trying to continually monitor what's happening through our communities, through the various groups, organizations, agencies, continuing to have our relationships and communications with them, because these are the caretakers, these are the hospice workers, these are the ones that we have to coordinate with, because they all individually have their databases. They know who is their priority, they know who may need a little assistance, they know who may need a lot of assistance. So it is a constant, dynamic, very challenging target to hit.
So in a sense, it's, Kern County Fire Department working with like Hall Ambulance, working with hospice, working with all those different agencies, knowing who's who and who needs what.
Absolutely. And that's some of the things, as I mentioned earlier, with that Isabella dam failure plan. There were MOUs put in place. There were agreements put in place through through Kern County Superintendent of Schools. They have large amounts of buses, people that can drive those buses. So you start to learn, okay, where are the resources at, and who has them at their disposal, and who can use these resources. So it's not a matter of the fire department has to have a fleet of 60 buses that just park and they're never used year after year. No, you identify who has these resources, who knows where these individuals with needs are. Those are the things that get identified in advance of emergencies, so that when the emergency hits, you know who to coordinate your efforts with. It's really multiple ingredients. As the audit had brought out, there are best practices, there are recommendations, there are certain guidelines for certain agencies, and there is, like you said, lessons learned from previous emergencies that have happened within our county. And so that's what it takes. It takes reviewing what has happened, what has been successful, what has not been successful, really trying to be creative, to learn new ways to solve some of these problems, and really to be creative to think of new problems. that's an issue in itself. You don't know what you don't know, and that's why hindsight's 2020. I keep mentioning that. We're constantly trying to establish what could go wrong, what might be needed. And that's why the audit had recommended you need to be in touch with your different community groups, your different language groups, your different social groups. And that's something that we're continuing to try to do, is to reach out to these various groups throughout our community. We're really excited about the partnership that's been growing with the Dolores Huertas Foundation. These are going to be key, absolutely crucial relationships when an emergency happens, because people need to hear reliable communication. They need to hear it in the language of their heart. It needs to be readily understood. And so these are the partnerships that we have to be developing now when it's not an emergency. And that way people have that reliable voice that they're accustomed to hearing, that they're comfortable with following the instructions given by that specific voice. It's a constant review and implementation process, and even the audit had recommended that some of the state agencies need to produce a guideline by the middle of 2020. So there is still, as the audit brought out, there's still a lot of guidelines that the auditors felt should exist that don't exist. And so we're constantly looking to say, maybe there's a guideline in this area and we're adhering to it. Maybe there's a guideline in this area, we're adhering to it. There's not one here, but whether there's a guideline or not there, are we doing our best for our citizens in this area? It needs to be that self-review. Even if there's not someone that's already given us a guideline, we need to be pushing for what's best. I would say invite the fire department to town hall meetings. Whenever various community groups are gathering to talk about the needs in their community, we'd love to participate that. We want to continue to help that dialogue, to be a part of that dialogue, and to understand all of the groups throughout our communities, the different homeowners associations, the different communities. We want to be a part of that. There are times that these events take place and we don't know till afterwards. So reaching out to the fire department helps us. We try to constantly search for opportunities to be involved in our community, to be there so we can listen to their concerns, so that we can help to explain to them some of the tools that are already there that are for their benefit. But it's going to take constant effort on the fire department's part, on every government agency's part, every public agency's part. When a large emergency occurs, it's everyone helping one another. And really, whether or not it's a successful outcome, it really comes down to each individual in this community. We talk over and over again about the importance that people take the personal effort to prepare for an emergency. People may hear that message, they may not. But if the people that are hearing that message are choosing not to prepare their household, not to prepare their car, not to prepare their families for an emergency, that's not going to be beneficial to themselves or their neighbors. We all have to. We all have an obligation. We live in these communities ourselves, whether we're firefighters or not. We take this serious. We all need to be preparing. We all need to be thinking about, have I opted in to these emergency notification systems? Have I gone to Ready Kern? Have I gone to Smart 911? Have I taken the time to do this? Or am I going to wait until it's too late?